Everybody was looking forward to the unstoppable force versus the immovable object.
He's got a counter move.
Edie with the left hand.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Gillis a good passer and pick and pop.
Smith upstairs. Jumbo jam. Zach Edey.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
UConn's got to get moving on the offensive end. Nice steal here. Smith. Nice pass.
Diarra lays it in.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Diarra, feed it.
Nice pass.
Turn, Diarra, blocked by Edey.
A body block. Nice look.
Oh, perfect pass, Lawyer. Denied. It's Caravan.
What a hustle play.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Handoff, Newton on the move. Drive and kick. Caravan, contact, no call. Spencer penetrates and the scoop goes. Camtastic.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Caravan using the Klingon screen. Feed it.
Replace.
Castle. Got a three.
They do that as well as anybody in the country.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. On this Wednesday afternoon, 10th of April, 365 Sports. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. We have full throttle today. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Emery Winter with the magical editing and getting things ready for the show later tonight. And Jack McKenzie is here as well. We will have Ashley Hodge as one of the owners of our site and also a college basketball analyst. He'll join us in just a moment. But let's get to Baylor, Kentucky, Scott Drew, and company. This is Scott Drew, the Baylor men's basketball coach, earlier today with a tremendous friend of his at Mi Casita. Eric Shiro is a big-time donor.
He's a tremendous friend of ours
yes.
because Alliance Bank is a sponsor of the show.
Sponsor of our show. Having lunch on Hewitt Drive, and the responses to this as they went on after that are hilarious. And also, Coach, we have Mexican food in Lexington, etc. But that was Scott Drew's not one to do that to create any drama. That's him just saying, hey, I'm here with my guy.
Yeah, and so I actually think that is him saying that he's staying, personally. I don't think that you're going to get any kind of big announcement. I think the big announcement that you might find if Scott Drew is, in fact, not going to Kentucky will just be someone like Jeff Goodman or the like reporting that Kentucky has moved on to their next candidate. Now, look, nothing is definitive, but it just does not seem to be in Scott Drew's personality to tweet something out that would mess with Baylor fans and be kind of cruel. It's just not him. So I think this leans more into the he's staying than he's going. I'm willing to be proven wrong on this. It's not like I'm 100% on it, but I just think that's kind of his personality. And also, any states that didn't used to be Mexico saying we have Mexican food here, like, not your best recruiting pitch, okay?
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Alliance Bank, one of our great sponsors, sitting there having lunch with Scott Drew and to Mi Casita as well, who's getting tons of free advertising today and review bombed and everything else because of the picture that Scott Drew posted. I'm with Paul in that I don't think that was unintentional in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, should probably mention that was in response to flight tracking reports and all of the other stuff swirling out there. That's why he posted it. It wasn't just a random, like, we all got up and there's Scott Drew at Mi Casita. It was a lot of stuff, or there was a lot of stuff flying around about a flight tracker, and it's Scott Drew going to Lexington, or flight from Waco to Lexington. Oh, wait, Scott Drew's not on that plane, but hinting that somebody else representing Scott Drew would be, and just a lot of noise. It's a wild coaching search, and I know that Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, has been talking a lot about this in like every direction and saying it's not a crazy coaching search yet. But I think from a Baylor perspective, it is because, they're wanting to know about those flights and wanting to know about Scott Drew in particular. So anything involving him, it feels pretty crazy right now. And you're trying to sort through that noise. And so Scott sliced through it. He sliced right through it with a picture of showing him in Waco when he was reportedly supposed to be in Lexington, Kentucky, meeting about this job. Now, does that slam the door shut? No, it does not. But it feels to me that was very intentional, and I think the door is, if anything, it's barely cracked open at this point. We'll see. I mean, it's a coaching search, so there can always be left and right turns, but I just think Scott Drew is not somebody to play the Twitter game too much outside of, obviously making a fun joke here at the expense of everybody wondering what's going on.
2 Kentucky writers will join us. John Clay, who we had on a couple of days ago from the newspaper in Lexington. Also, Keith Taylor is going to join us. He has been with some of the news, too. In fact, he told me earlier today he thinks it's just a matter of time on the Scott Drew front when it comes to Kentucky. A lot of things can change in a matter of 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour. We will have both of them on. John Clay will join us. Also, Chuck Cooperstein on his thoughts in Scott Drew Baylor and his thoughts about what Drew, in his opinion, will do at around 3:30. So there's the shot of him and Eric Shero having lunch at Meet Casita. Then Matt Jones, you spoke of him, this tweet. I was told via a text screenshot that someone saw the picture of Drew eating at Mexican restaurant in Waco. I figured out which one, called it, and had the waitress go over and say, "We need you in Lexington." This was an entirely new thread. Whether that actually occurred or not remains to be seen. Meanwhile, John Rothstein earlier today saying that yes, Scott Drew, it's just a matter of time. We'll meet with Kentucky regarding the head coaching vacancy in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, that restaurant story, I don't know if they verified it or not yet, but he also posted a text exchange of somebody saying how they saw the picture, called the restaurant, had somebody on the other end say, "Let me talk to," or didn't know who Scott Drew was, and they said, "Oh, he's the one in the white Baylor polo or whatever." And then, but I don't know that it's been verified that that's actually happened. If it was, it's just it's a fun tall tale, or it's an actual real tale from this coaching search that's going to be a funny memory one way or the other if it actually happened. And if it didn't, then it's just one of those urban legends. But wouldn't put it past Kentucky fans to have done something along those lines. And if it was true, then Drew, had like a tip of the cap, but for the efforts at least. But I can also see where he'd go, yeah, that's a little bit too much for me. I'd rather just be able to eat Mexican food and not be, getting tracked down and called to the restaurant. But, I don't know. This is part of the fun and the craziness, if you will, of this coaching search so far.
We have Ashley on hold for just 1 minute. Here are exchanges between a Kentucky fan or two and Chip Gaines, who we know is a huge Baylor alum and fan. The Barstool Kentucky on, "Please keep Scott Drew away from these two." And then Chip Gaines, "You all wish." And then "Don't go hand in hand." Actually, bag for bag is what I meant. I think he meant with us, Chip. And he goes, "Money is boring. Everybody's got money. We've got God on our side." And so there was a nice thread between those two and among Kentucky fans earlier today with Chip Gaines getting involved.
Yeah, Chip's obviously a huge basketball fan, huge Scott Drew and Baylor basketball fan. Is at a lot of the games and a big supporter. And I think the best exchange that he had was actually from another Kentucky fan who now I'm blanking on it about, basically the money would get whatever they wanted. They could buy whatever they wanted. And Chip Gaines responded, "That's not what Dan Hurley told me." So that was another great quip from Chips, who's having a hell of a day on Twitter so far. You might want to back off, or I don't know, you're on fire. Maybe you keep tweeting and just keep nailing threes, or maybe you're on the hot streak and you need to leave while you're at your best. But he's certainly having a day there on the social media.
Ashley Hodge joined us back when this story kind of became a thing after the Calipari news, Arkansas. He joins us now on 365 Sports. Ashley, I know when you had a couple of thoughts with us earlier in the week, you feel like this is going to be okay. Have you changed at all, and has anything changed with your opinion about Scott and Baylor / and Kentucky in the last maybe even couple of hours?
It is an hour-to-hour thing. Thanks for having me on. I think that a couple of days ago, I was confident he would stay. I still am leaning towards him staying for a lot of reasons. And family is a huge part of that. We've talked about that on the message boards. I know you guys have covered that well. But I do think it's more of a 50-50 proposition at this point. I think it's going to be decided by tomorrow morning, but neither outcome would surprise me. It's good for the message boards, certainly driving a ton of conversation. I would hate to say goodbye to him. I think he would, be better for Baylor Nation if he retires a Baylor Bear. But if he does make that choice, he wants a new challenge, a new mountain to climb, then I think we need to start looking at other options to take his place. And I would say either outcome is possible, but right now I'm still leaning on him staying at Baylor.
Actually, would he have tweeted out a picture of him and Eric Shiro if he was just going to pull the rug out from Baylor fans, though?
I don't think he thought that much into it. I mean, I think that was more of a tweet of, I'm not in Kentucky, like the rumors say. I'm here in Waco. So I think that was probably, how we should read that tweet. I don't think it has anything to do on whether he ultimately decides to stay or go.
This is Ashley Hodge, one of the partners, by the way, of 365 Sports and SicEm365.com on the Richard Carr Baylor Bear hotline right here on 365 Sports.
Ashley, at this point, if you're Mack Rhoades or anybody else involved on the Baylor side of things, is there anything that you're trying to offer up, or have you pretty much maximized what you can do at this point? It's just a Scott Drew life decision of, I know what I've got here. I've got everything at my disposal. But on the flip side, I just want this challenge. I want to go to the Alabama football, the Lakers, version of college basketball. Beyond that, is there really anything Baylor can do, you feel like, to tip scales one way or the other?
I don't think so. I think you nailed it. I think it's an itch, you might call it. I think from a basketball standpoint, based on what Baylor's doing, it's pretty equal. I mean, he might make a little bit more money at Kentucky. He may have a little bit more NIL at his disposal, but it's not enough to tip the scales one way or the other. The comfortable thing would be to stay. The risk would be to take this challenge on. And, I don't know what he ultimately decides, but he knows all the pros and cons of each location, and he knows it's going to be a fishbowl. He knows, his normal life as he knows it is probably over if he takes the Kentucky job. But I think it's all about whether he wants the platform, the challenge, and I think he's looking at it as a spiritual, decision. What is this going to give me a bigger platform to share, the Christian faith, or, do I just keep, building on the work that I've already done at Baylor? So I think to him, it's more a decision that lines up with, his spiritual faith. And I think that's going to be the root of what he decides.
If he stays at Baylor, and I feel like he will, and others have, on this show, we've discussed it ourselves, and so have you, Ashley. But if he does stay, what kind of a banger or hammer does that mean for Mack Rhoades, Baylor, the basketball program moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gives Baylor confidence that, he's going to be here until he retires. And I've shared this on the message boards. I don't think that's a long window. I think he probably views this as 5 to 7 more years. And then he's going to, do more of a Jay Wright, around the age of 60, call it quits and go on to, the next chapter of his life. But I think if he decides the next 5 or 7 years are better off at Baylor, then I think it's, certainly Baylor fans, I think, can be confident that he's going to stay during that duration. And then they can look, towards the future after that. But I think it says a lot about what Mack Rhoades has done, to make Baylor basketball, destination. I mean, even though he's won a national championship here, it's as far as fan support, we could do a lot of work, to still, grow our diehard base. I mean, we know it'll never be Kentucky. We know it'll never be some of these, schools that treat basketball as a religion. But as I said earlier, that comes with some pros and cons. I mean, the pro is obviously the fan support. The con is you have no privacy, no normal life. I mean, it is treated like a religion. You're treated like a rock star, and that comes with some snares and toils as well. So I think he knows that, and I think he's just weighing those things, and it'll be interesting to see what he decides.
Actually, with that, you said, Baylor fans could do some more things. I would suggest that one of those things is pretty simple. Go to more road games, because Kentucky fans, other than their just sheer numbers, of which there are, I mean, there's not a lot of T-shirt Baylor fans as there would be Kentucky basketball fans, obviously. But I think that's one simple thing. Like, if Baylor fans are like, how can we, make this a little more enticing? And I'm not saying, go to Utah and then go to BYU and follow them on the road, like the Grateful Dead or something. I'm just saying, when they play at TCU or somewhere like that, go.
Yeah, they do a good job of showing up when they play TCU. I'm sure they will at Houston. There are certain locations where they do show out pretty well. Not so much in Lubbock. But yeah, those are the areas like Oklahoma State, Lubbock, and I think NCAA tournament games are big. I think that Baylor Nation needs to make a commitment to follow the Bears as long as the road will take them at the NCAA venues, and even if that's not close to home, things like that would matter. But I don't think this decision is about that. I mean, we can never compete with a Kentucky as far as that's concerned, but we could do better. We could do better. So I think, growing our diehard base will be important, whether Scott Drew's the next coach, or Grant McCaslin, or Jerome Tang, or John Jacobs, or whoever it is. I mean, I think, we would do better to, continue to try to grow our fan base and support on the road and neutral sites. No doubt about it.
You brought up some former coaches who are now assistant coaches, Matt Driscoll, obviously, Paul Mills. There's a ton of them out there. Would that be the short list? Or would they look elsewhere? Would that, because all of those guys understand what is successful, why it's successful at Baylor and Waco.
Yeah, I think those three that I mentioned are going to be heavily considered. I think they obviously get the culture, they get the fit, they know what it takes to have a championship program in Waco. So, I think it's a natural thought to think that those three would be at the top of the list. But I know Mack Rhoades is going to be. He has a list. He's already got, I'm sure, and I'm sure there's probably been some feelers being put out. If this happens, I mean, they probably already had that going with the Louisville situation. So I have no doubt that Mack Rhoades is going to act swiftly, and that it's not going to be a long, exhaustive process, that there will be another coach in place quickly if this does happen, if Scott Drew does choose to go to Kentucky.
All right, so your thoughts about how long can this linger before it starts to get a little bit, not toxic, but it starts to get to be a little bit more than you're kind of proud of the guy getting his name out for places like Kentucky?
I think it'll be decided by tomorrow. I think both Kentucky and Scott Drew have a very vested interest in having this chapter close by tomorrow. So I don't expect it to go longer than tomorrow.
Has he met with Kentucky yet, in your opinion?
Define met with.
Someone representing Scott Drew talked with Kentucky?
He's obviously, he was not on that plane that got 10,000 million or whatever you want to call flight tracker hits, but
right.
A phone call. Has he spoken with Kentucky, with Mitch Barnhart, but not necessarily have to meet with anybody in person?
Yeah, I'm almost certain that that's happened. So I think, I don't know if there's been any details of contract, and those types of details have been worked out. But I do think that he's certainly had, pretty extensive conversations with Kentucky about the job at this point.
All right. Thank you very much. If, in fact, they did not have the Foster Pavilion and it was only still like maybe they're leveling ground around the Robinson Tower, if that wasn't up and running, even though they have work to do on it throughout the rest of the year and into the future, if that wasn't there, would this have been an easier decision for Scott to leave?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think if the arena was still coming, that it might be, an equal equation. But I think he knows how special it can be. I know he knows that, what he's been working for to get that home court advantage, he now has. So, I mean, that's a plus for Baylor. I mean, it's, I think he's going to weigh that along with all the other considerations. So it's going to be an interesting 24 hours. Hopefully he remains a Baylor Bear, but we'll know soon.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate your time. Ashley Hodge, who's very much a part of men's basketball when it comes to Baylor, travels with the team, travels to watch them wherever they might be. An insider for us on the site and also on this show on Baylor men's basketball.
Yeah, I don't think that there might be equal, but I don't know if there's a bigger Baylor basketball fan out there, guys. I mean, I'm sure there's others that we know that are very passionate.
Ashley Hodge, and maybe a couple of others. Yeah, that's who you think about. Yeah,
a bigger one than Ashley, right, though. So, yeah, he's about as plugged in as you can get. And I'll say, if you're a Kentucky fan listening to that, there was some things to be optimistic about, like the Mika Sita picture. I'm going to have to stop saying that. We don't advertise for them. The Mexican restaurant picture. But, hey, if you want to jump on, we'll mention you all you want. But taking that as – Scott Drew's too smart to just post that and not know what he's doing, right? And then Ashley kind of just threw water on that and said, well, no, I think he might have just been, having fun with the whole situation. So if that's the case, I don't think he realized what a grenade that he lobbed that might be bigger than he realized. But that certainly makes you think, okay, well, maybe that was just a little fun, and it doesn't mean anything, because there are certainly some that are seeing that and taking that as, like I said at the top of the show, like he wouldn't post that if he didn't think, well, if he wasn't thinking the way that I'm thinking, then he would post that.
Guy. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that you're looking for every clue, everything that's posted now, you're looking for like an avenue for it to take you down that takes you to where the end thing is. And so we're all looking for that clue of, is he going to the left door to Kentucky, or is he going to, stay at home here in Waco? And so, yeah, we're all head spinning, wondering what's going to happen next, but it's something that does feel like it's going to have to pop one way or the other here in the next 24 hours, because I don't think either side is going to be able to take this through the weekend.
Yeah, it's a Y in a road. You go left, you go right, whatever. You don't have a U-turn because you get hit in the back by somebody else. What's interesting is here's a guy in Scott Drew that took over the mess. We all know about the dumpster fire. Created the run when they had Tweety Carter, Quincy Acey, Epe Udo, and they were able to have success 5 or 6 years after he arrived. And then he kind of went through a stretch, we've discussed this, where he had to kind of become a chameleon. They had some one-and-dones of the guys that were NBA talent, Perry Jones, Isaiah Austin, etc. Then they pivoted from that because it was working. It wasn't like those guys didn't contribute, but it was Oliver, Quincy Miller.
Yeah.
But then he went to the junior college point guard route. Kenny Cherry, Pierre Jackson, among others. A young man that came in from Miami that was really, really good. Mono Lecomte. And on top of that, they had others who transferred, Brady Heslop, etc. Then on top of that, then they went to the transfer portal where you could allow players to marinate. That turned out to be the 2021 National Championship game team with Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague, Jared Butler, among some others. So he's been a chameleon. Now they've gone back to getting one-and-dones again. But Keontae George, and now whatever happens, obviously with Eve Missy, and also with Jacoby Walter, he is very good about changing what is needed from the zone defense to man-to-man, depending on what he has. And now here he has the world in front of him, the basketball world waiting on him to make a decision whether it remain at Baylor or is it Kentucky.
Yeah, he's got some great recruits lined up as well. I know Kentucky fans are already salivating at the thought of being able to immediately add, one of those prospects. So it's a situation where, Drew's apparently got everything at his disposal to all of our knowledge and every indication imaginable. This is just simply a desire thing. I mean, that's what it is. We can break down like, well, Kentucky could offer this, or Kentucky can recruit this, or he's getting 5 stars, he's getting one-and-dones, he's won a national title, he's won the Big 12, he's done everything but win the Big 12 tournament, basically. And you don't have to have that on your resume to go into the Hall of Fame at this point. You're already in there no matter what. So, he's a guy who's well set up, but is that allure of coaching in that big blue seat in Lexington, Kentucky, going to override what he's already built up over the last 20 years? I don't know. It'd be a hell of a decision to have to make. I mean, we could only all be so fortunate to be in that position where we built something from scratch with our own blood, sweat, tears, and our hands, and have it turn into the premier program in the country in 2021 and one of the best programs in the country year in and year out now, but then also have the option of starting anew and going and taking on this monumental challenge. So, I mean, it's an enviable position. It also isn't, because either way you're going to disappoint some people, and certainly far more disappoint the people here in Waco that have gotten to know you over the last couple of decades. But, it's your decision to make. So we'll see here in the next day. That definitely feels like it's something that's got to happen here pretty soon for both sides to know what they need to do one way or the other. I think Baylor would be okay. I'm not saying they'd be great like they have been with Scott Drew, but I do feel like the number of Drew X's are giving them some great options if they have to go down that route.
It wasn't always easy. The Georgia State loss, we've discussed that at length. Paul was there. The phone calls that came after that. Like, can he only get us to a certain level? Then he pivoted and then won the national title. 3 years in a row, they've been knocked out in the round of 32. That happens, too, even as you can look at some of the Blue Bloods.
He's been very good, like you said, of riding the wave of how college basketball has changed and adjusting his team, which is what makes him perfect for Kentucky, because John Calipari wasn't. John Calipari was just kind of doing it the one way and then going to all.
At least after the great start.
Yeah, after the great start, for the last few years, which is why I think the John Calipari and Jimbo Fisher comparisons are very valid at this point. Now, John Calipari has a much easier way to reboot than Jimbo does at this point in his career, but that's really what was going on at Kentucky is, I'm getting all these NBA guys. Why are we not winning? Well, you got to have a mix now, because if your NBA guys are all 19 and these guys are all 24, well, guess who's...
Yeah, you're talking about playing up against grown men.
Yeah.
Mike Cole in the chat room, like that guy said, you better be ready. Your life is over as you know it, which is, we even had this discussion about being at a Mexican restaurant in Tyler, Mi Casita, and then all of a sudden...
Waco.
What did I say?
Tyler.
In Kentucky, Tyler. Waco. And then all of a sudden, you have people calling the restaurant. It's different. Is that a good thing? He kind of was probably impressed by that and also has to take a deep breath and go, man, you really can't just go anywhere. And he wouldn't be able to do that in Lexington. And really everyone knows him in Waco also at the same time. Here's a note about Scott Drew and Rupp Arena. In 2012, Scott Drew was the first coach to come into Lexington and beat a John Calipari Kentucky team in Rupp Arena, ending what was a 55-0 streak that had stretched back to 2009. So there you are with that. When we come back, we'll have more on Calipari and his contract at Arkansas, but also, guys, as about insightful as anyone can be and knowledgeable, and Chuck Cooperstein, his thoughts about Scott Drew and why Baylor, in his opinion, is the perfect place. Taking your talk, your opinion and discussions in the chat room today, and the text line is 254-339-1122. This is 365 Sports. It is PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. You might have low T, low testosterone. You may not know that. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have low testosterone. It happens. It's part of father time. Your body just changes. Some battle high cholesterol. Some battle other issues, high blood pressure. And then 1 out of every 3 or 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can help you out. Contact them, PettyClinicLowT.com. He will set you up to get your blood work. Take care of that. Get the results, and if your testosterone level is too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level, and you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
Rev up your excitement. Celebrate the spirit of adventure during the Jeep Celebration event. Join us at Allen Samuels in Waco as we roll out incredible deals on rugged and reliable Jeep vehicles you love. Seize the moment and drive home in the new Jeep of your dreams. With special financing options and exclusive offers, there has never been a better time to explore the world of Jeep. Hurry in, the savings won't last long. Visit AllenSamuelsDCJ.com and see them firsthand only at Allen Samuels in Waco. Let your adventure begin.
Come by, let's be friends.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Casasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Casasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Dallas Mavericks, who's been on the road. Man, what a run they've had. We will discuss all that in a moment. I saw your tweet yesterday about the Scott Drew Kentucky discussion, speculation. I just saw John Rothstein say that Kentucky will meet with him sometime in the near future. I don't see him leaving, but this is like the Alabama of college basketball. But I love what you said. Unless you're Roy Williams leaving to save your alma mater, a king does not abdicate his throne.
There's no question. And look, I know, listen, football matters in Texas. And when Baylor football is good as it was a few years ago and going to the Sugar Bowl and playing as well as they did there and beating Ole Miss, that can change things. But Scott Drew has had, certainly at least the last 14 years, of unparalleled success to where he has built that program to the point that it really is in many ways self-sustaining as long as he's there. His ability to recruit, his ability to coach, his ability to win games in the most competitive league in the country and finish in the upper half of that, and in fact really in the top third of it yearly, speaks volumes to him. And unless he's really interested in taking on the challenge of all challenges, I don't see why he would leave when he knows that he can win and he can win big in a place that he clearly is happy. I mean, they built him an arena that really fits his specifications. He's got all the NIL that he needs to recruit top flight NBA level first round talent. I mean, I don't see why he would leave. I don't see him as the Eddie Sutton in the mid-'80s when he famously said, I'd crawl to Kentucky to take that job from Arkansas. I don't see that with Scott. I think Scott's the kind of guy that says, listen, if somebody calls, I'll listen. But it doesn't mean I'm going. And I'm with you, David. I don't see it. And I know Kentucky fans, look at their program kind of like Alabama looks at their football program as the be-all and end-all. But, man, there's a lot of mess that goes with that as well. Scott has everything pretty well under control in Waco as far as I can tell. Who knows what it's like for him if he goes up to Kentucky.
I was on Big 12 radio with Ari and Dave earlier today, and they said, what can Kentucky do? I said, Scott, you could always money whip somebody. We've seen that in golf. We've seen that in coaching changes, NIL. But he doesn't seem to be. First of all, he's among the top 5 highest paid coaches now. His NIL, as you mentioned, is incredibly strong and established. The new arena, and 21 years where you started where it was just an absolute dumpster fire. Some, though, money can make people change. He has an arena that is phenomenal for what Baylor needs and has. Rupp Arena's 3 times as big, but the fan base is 100 times maybe larger. But there's a lot that goes with that, too. The rabid fan base can also be, I guess you could say, almost hard to deal with.
Absolutely. I mean, they ran John Calipari out of town.
Yep. Tubby Smith.
They ran the man out of town.
Yeah.
And there are only like, 5 or 6 coaches who have ever won a national championship into 4 Final Fours and had a winning percentage of a 750 or better, having been at the school 15 years or more. I mean, we're talking Adolph Rupp, and we're talking Mike Krzyzewski, Tarkanian. I mean, you're talking about the legends of the game. And they ran John Calipari out on a rail, and Cal knew he had to leave. Which, it's ironic because I had tweeted right after Kentucky was eliminated that if I was SMU, I would be calling John Calipari immediately. He would absolutely be the guy. I wasn't sure if he actually was going to be in play, but you know what? If you're thinking that's your big time and you're willing to spend the money to be big time, which they say they are, then there's nobody that you make the first call to other than John Calipari, especially if you're SMU and you need a program to sell to Dallas and to be highly competitive right away because he's going to recruit great players. I mean, that was an absolute no-brainer that I think SMU just totally whipped on, and especially now in light that he moved to Kentucky. And again, you make John Calipari say no. Now, as it turns out, he can go to Arkansas, and he's got the Tyson family, not only making chickens, but also creating a bunch of NIL that's going to allow him to do what he's always done. And let's face it, maybe when you've been – who was it? Spike Dykes famously said you lose 1/10 of your support every year you're at school. So basically when you're there 10 years, you're pretty well done. Well, he made it to 15, and maybe he needs one last challenge, and he can do it at a place that loves basketball, that has succeeded at basketball, and now obviously has the financial resources as well to go along with it.
I mentioned this also about Scott earlier today. He's entrenched in Waco, Texas. He's changed based on early on just trying to survive. Then he was able to get a Tweety Carter, obviously Quincy Acey, Epe Udo. Then he went after the one-and-dones, and some of them were okay. Then he established go get JUCO point guards since you couldn't recruit the ones you really needed to get to Waco. Then he went to the transfer portal before it was the transfer portal to build the 21 team. He's like a chameleon in what is necessary at that particular time. He's not afraid to change, is he?
No, and let's face it, as a coach, one of the things he did really well once Baylor got itself established and had players, he played a lot of zone when nobody was playing zone, and they played that zone really well, maybe just this side of Syracuse, when it came to that. But as his talent level has risen even higher, he's kind of gotten away from it. He'll use it as a curveball, but he's changed his approach toward defense and how he wants his team to play it. Sometimes they haven't played it too well, and there were times this year when they really didn't play it at the level that I know he wanted them to play at. But I think he's a really good coach. There was the thing for a long time, David, where all they said about Scott, well, he can recruit, and there were lots of people, with the air quotes around recruit and how he was doing it. Well, I mean, he's clearly shown that he doesn't have to do it the way people think he was doing it, and he doesn't really even need, a guy like Jerome Tang, who was as great as he was as a recruiter, to still be able to get the job done and get the players that he wants.
If, in fact, it happens and he ends up in Kentucky, what would Baylor do? Is it Jerome and it's McCaslin, and you've got Jake has just left, and obviously Paul Mills? It's like his coaching tree would be your search, I would think, based on the knowing what Waco and Baylor brings to the table and what you can do there.
I think that's where I'd go, if for no other reason than his coaching tree has succeeded.
Yep.
You know, and let's face it, if Grant McCaslin was available, he would have gone after him too.
Yep.
And Baylor would have gone after him. But yeah, I mean, you look at what Paul Mills has done at Oral Roberts, and what Jerome Tang clearly did at Kansas State. I mean, listen, his name has been out there for a whole bunch of jobs in this cycle, including Arkansas. Listen, until Calipari did what he did, I think a lot of people thought Jerome Tang was going to get that job. So he, I think, can be had. And let's face it, there's no stigma in leaving one school in your league for another. I mean, that's gone by the boards a long time ago, and I don't know why you wouldn't make that first call to Jerome Tang if indeed Scott leaves. But again, I'm with you, David. I don't think he's leaving. All
right, the Mavericks are on fire. They all of a sudden hit this chemistry level, and I know that it has to still have the Luka and Kyrie, but with Gap, the ability of where the Mavericks are right now, with only, a day or 3 or 5 left in the season, could you have imagined this maybe 6 weeks ago?
No, not after they were giving up 129 points a game and losing 5 out of 6. And ironically, I'm in Miami. The Mavericks play the Heat tonight, and it's against Miami that all of this started. Mm-hmm. And people forget that in that game, the Mavericks' defense in the first quarter was hideous. They were down 15. They were getting backdoored to death. They didn't know what they were doing defensively. And then, somehow they righted the ship in that game, got themselves figured out defensively. I don't know what they found in that game, but also that was the game where they changed the starting lineup and they put Gafford in full time as a starter along with Derek Jones, and they've got the rotation they have now. But since then, their defense has been absolutely elite when you've got Doncic and Irving playing the way they're playing. And so there you go. I mean, and the only losses, a 7-point loss in Oklahoma City when Luka didn't play, and a 4-point game at Golden State last week that was every bit a playoff game and every bit played as well as that you would hope that it would be played. And if that's what it's going to take for teams to beat them, then I think if I'm the Mavericks and I'm a Maverick fan, I think I'm pretty excited about what's lying ahead.
It is fun to watch. They are fun to watch, no doubt about it. Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Dallas Mavericks, and one of the guys that really, no matter what the topic is, including the week of the Masters or the Rangers and what happened with Leclerc, we could do any of that. But today, Scott Drew, Kentucky, Baylor, and also the Mavericks. Coop, thanks for your time.
Appreciate you, David, as always.
Chuck Cooperstein on 365 Sports. When we come back, we're going to check in with Michael Swain. He covers KU football. John Clay will join us on Kentucky and what's being said in Lexington. He was on with us a couple of days ago. He'll join us today at 4. A lot more to get to, including near the end of the show, Rob Bolton from PGAtour.com on the Masters, the week of the Masters and our Masters picks. We'll have fun with those picks and also Rob Bolton. Keith Taylor's going to join us later in the show, also covers Kentucky athletics. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, where you can find out what is bothering you, what hurts you to where it's shutting you down. Your doctor, your orthopedic surgeons looked at your knee, thinks there might be something torn, maybe just meniscus, or is it a ligament? And just meniscus still hurts like hell. Your rotator cuff or your bicep is detached, or possibly in your lower back you've got problems with whatever is going on there with your vertebrae. How do you find out? Ideal MRI, state-of-the-art imaging machine. Been there for a while. And even better, the cost is $497 or less every single time. I have been in that machine 3 times. I have never paid more than $497. In fact, one time paid a little bit less than that. They will help you file your insurance papers too. Ideal MRI with Dr. Rob Maxey. It's located again just on the southern part of Waco in the Central Texas marketplace off I-35 at idealmri.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Well, good afternoon, and welcome back to 365 Sports. We had a transformer that went out and knocked out power around the several blocks. Traffic lights started coming back, and now we are back. Garrett Ross and Emery Winter, great job getting that done. Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak, and sorry for the inconvenience. but a great way to start us back on the air with John Clay. He joins us. John, of course, covers Kentucky basketball and Kentucky athletics, has been on with us earlier when the Calipari story popped. John, thanks for your time. What have you heard today, if anything new, or what you are hearing at this time on Scott Drew in Kentucky?
What we're hearing is probably the same thing you guys are hearing. That Kentucky has talked to Scott Drew about the job. Not sure if they've made an official offer to Scott Drew, but certainly he is the focus of their attention right now. And we don't expect anything to happen today, as far as like any kind of announcement one way or another. But we could hear something tomorrow.
John, what do you think is the sweetener in the deal to get him away from the program he built?
Well, I mean, I think it probably offered him more money than he makes at Baylor. He'd be coming to a program, obviously, with 8 national championships, with a history of winning, a lot of, fan support, coming to a state where basketball, where people care passionately about basketball. Also, I think the fact, as we've talked, I think I talked with you guys about before, he has a prior relationship with Mitch Barnhart, dating back a few years. I think they think along the same lines. I know that Scott's faith is very important to him, and I know Mitch's faith is very important to him. So I think they feel like that they are two people. I think Mitch feels like he could work well with Scott Drew, and I think he feels like Scott could work well with him. And he also feels that he's a very good basketball coach and would do a good job here. Now, I guess it's up to Scott whether he wants to make that move or not.
John, there's obviously been other names rumored. Danny Hurley is somebody that, I mean, if it was the fan choice, he'd probably be the guy that everybody picked, rightfully so, back-to-back national champ. But he kind of seemingly took his name out. I know Billy Donovan, another name mentioned. Do you feel like it's all eyes on Scott Drew right now, or do you think there's still other talks ongoing and Kentucky's still kind of vetting what all is out there for them?
No, I think it's all Scott Drew right now. I think if Scott Drew wants the job, I think there's at least a 90% chance or maybe 100% chance that Scott will be the coach. That doesn't mean that they aren't, talking to other coaches as far as if Scott says no and decides to stay at Baylor, that they, obviously they would have to go in another direction. It's not going to be Danny Hurley. I would be really surprised if it's him. And there were reports last night that Kentucky was going to throw $11 million a year at Danny, but I don't think he's made it pretty clear. He made it clear again today that he has no intention of leaving, that all he's thinking about is a three-peat at Connecticut. Billy Donovan, I thought it was interesting last night. People quizzed Billy. The media talked to Billy about it before the Bulls game, and Billy said all his focus was on the Bulls. He didn't shut the door on going to Kentucky, but he basically said, he even said at one point, "Is Cal left? Is Cal even left yet?" And I think I told you guys before, all the talk I've heard over the last few years is that Billy really had no interest in returning to college basketball, maybe even less so now, considering the way the landscape has changed with the transfer portal and NIL. Nate Oates put out a statement that he's not going anywhere. That's the thing. If Scott Drew says no, he wants to stay at Baylor, we're not sure which direction Kentucky turns after this. There's not an obvious guy after Scott. So, but right now, I think definitely Kentucky's focus is on Scott and whether or not he wants to leave Waco and come to Lexington.
So we've seen a little bit of the, and I say crazy in a positive way, probably most of it, as far as Kentucky basketball fans. Scott Drew had a picture along with Eric Shiro from a local bank, Alliance Bank, one of our sponsors, who's also a huge fan of Scott's and the men's basketball program. And then all of a sudden, allegedly, there might have been a fan or 20,000 who called the restaurant and asked to speak with Scott. You saw that. There's the flight tracker with Scott Drew on the plane. And yet he's in Waco. How much this is typical of why it's such a rabid fan base?
Yeah, I made the joke on Twitter that apparently there are two Scott Drews. One is touring Lexington and one is eating chips and salsa in Waco. So Kentucky might be getting a real bargain if they can get Scott Drew. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of craziness with every coaching search. But Kentucky, you can multiply that by 10 probably. That's always it. I don't know whether I believe the story about somebody trying to figure out the restaurant and calling the restaurant. You hear those kinds of crazy stories. But definitely, I mean, that is the thing. For better or worse at Kentucky, there is a lot of interest in Kentucky about Kentucky basketball. If you come here and you coach here, that you have to deal with that. You're going to be living in a fishbowl. Everybody knows. Everybody wants to know your every move. Everybody wants to criticize your every coaching move. So, I mean, that comes with the territory. If you want to be the coach here, I wrote that column today. This job is not built for everybody. And but from everything I've heard, I think Scott would be able to handle that. I think he's different than Calipari, and you guys know more about this. You can tell me more. He's a different personality from Calipari, which I think is probably a good thing. You don't really want to follow one bombastic coach with another bombastic coach, or one coach who has one style and then have the same exact style with the next coach. So Cal himself said the other day in his video yesterday that Kentucky needs a different voice, and I think Scott Drew would be a different voice. But I also know that Scott, as you guys know, Scott has done a tremendous job there turning around and building that Baylor program. He's got deep ties there. I know he's got just as that picture today, he's got a lot of close friends there in Waco. I'm sure it's a very hard decision for him. And if he does, whichever way he decides to go, I know it's going to be, he's going to have to put a lot of thought into it and make the best decision he thinks is right for himself and his family.
Yeah, you're not going to see bombastic, but you'll see a personality that either remains in Waco or wherever he is, if it's Kentucky, that is so full throttle, like it almost, some people thought initially it wasn't real. And it's as real and genuine as you could possibly be. But don't let that be mistaken that he doesn't want to compete and win and has a burning desire inside of his stomach to do so. So, yeah, but not like that outwardly confidence or arrogance that you might see whether you think it's Calipari or somebody else.
Right, and you have to. Oh yeah, Kentucky knows he's competitive. He came into Rupp Arena and beat Kentucky. Yeah, I think that was Kentucky's first home loss under Calipari, or one of the first home losses under Calipari. And then Kentucky, you guys may remember, Kentucky went down there to played in Cowboy Stadium, played Baylor down there, not during an ice storm.
Yep.
And Baylor beat them again. Now Kentucky did beat Baylor in 2012 in the NCAA tournament, when Kentucky won the championship. But no, Kentucky's very familiar with Scott Drew as a competitor. The other thing, too, Kentucky, I mean, we're right next door to Indiana. Kentucky knows the Drew family from Indiana, Homer Drew, Bryce Drew, great reputation for what they did in Indiana. They know that's a great basketball family. The Drew family's a great basketball family. So, they know, they already know a lot about Scott Drew from that standpoint. That's for sure.
Well, and they can have any one of those Drews, John. They can have any one of them. John, for Kentucky fans, like, how concerned are you that they have this, Ocean's 11 cast of a coaching search when, if Scott Drew does say no and he stays, that they go to plan B and that guy is going to be coming in with less hoopla than they would be, but that guy might be the right guy.
Yeah, John Adams, a friend of mine who's a longtime columnist with Knoxville News Sentinel, wrote once, I think is very true. No search is a bad search that hires the right coach. And so I think that, if they do have to go to plan B and they end up coming up with somebody who maybe doesn't have the name recognition or the same resume as a Scott Drew or a Danny Hurley or somebody like that, that doesn't mean they picked the wrong coach. The only thing that, there's not a person, there's not a young up-and-coming guy out there that you would say, okay, here's who Kentucky should have to go after. When Kentucky hired Rick Pitino in 1989, they were on probation, coming off a scandal with Eddie Sutton. Pitino was the young up-and-coming coach, but he had already taken Providence to the Final Four. He was already the coach of the Knicks when they convinced him to leave the Knicks and come to Kentucky. There's really not anybody out there that really fits that bill. Mark Pope has deep Kentucky ties. He played on Pitino's 1996 national championship team. Mark is a great guy, really smart guy, but he's a young coach who doesn't quite have that resume. He's done a really good job at Utah Valley and BYU. I think if he had made a big run with BYU this year in the tournament, he would be more prominently mentioned on Kentucky's list. But after that, there's not really a guy out there. So if Scott Drew does say no, I'm staying in Waco, and I think a lot of people here, I think I would certainly understand that, and I think most fans here, most reasonable fans of Kentucky would understand that. But if he does say no, I'm not sure where Mitch Barnhart turns, to be honest with you.
John, so the seconds are ticking, minutes, hours, whatever. How long before, if you're a Kentucky administrator, Mitch Barnhart, or those who love the program, how long of a wait before they start to get nervous? Because I'm sure Baylor fans feel the same way in the opposite way, that they would like to hear something soon.
Yeah, I don't think from either standpoint, because of the relationship between Mitch and Scott, I think Mitch will give Scott ample time to make the decision. But I think Scott, in deference to Mitch, won't drag this out. I really think we'll know something tomorrow, one way or another. We might even know something. This word might even leak out late tonight. I don't think there'll be any announcement or anything then. But I think it'll. Tomorrow there's a good chance this is all going to wrap up one way or another as far as his candidacy tomorrow. The other thing is, with the transfer portal and everything going on, Kentucky needs to hire somebody quickly, and I'm sure Baylor feels the same way. If Scott Drew is going to leave, they would hate it, but they want it to happen quickly so they can go ahead and get another coach, and then both programs can get to the task of building their roster for next season. Because you can't look on Twitter or look on any of the sites that cover college basketball, and there's just more and more people entering the portal every day. One of the big recruits that Kentucky Calipari had coming in, his father said yesterday, or maybe 2 days ago, that he was sticking with Kentucky no matter what Calipari did. And then today, after Calipari's announcement, they announced that, he's decided to put his name in the portal after all. He's asked to get out of his letter of intent. So I think, whether it's Kentucky or Baylor, one of the two is really going to have to be scrambling, trying to put together a roster for next season. So I don't think they want to string that out.
All right. If Scott Drew decides to go to Kentucky, it will be a kick in the you-know-what for Baylor's fan base. No doubt about it, because of what he's meant here and what he's done and what he can still do. What will it be for Kentucky fans with other options, but if he was to say no to them? What would it mean to them?
Well, I think they'd be disappointed. There's some people here that, they were hoping for Danny Hurley, or they were hoping for somebody like that. And people have had to remind them, hey, Scott Drew's done a terrific job there at Baylor, and he's under tough circumstances, and he won the championship a couple of years ago. So I think there would be people be disappointed. But like I said, I think a reasonable Kentucky fan would understand that, as you said, Scott's been there for 20 years. I think he's been loyal to Waco, and his family, and that would be the best decision for him to stay. I think they'd be disappointed, but I think if there is such a thing as a reasonable Kentucky fan, I think they would understand that decision. But I think I think he would be a good choice, especially from the standpoint, like we said earlier, I think he would be that different voice that Cal talked about and have a different style about him that would help this program. So we'll see how it plays out.
Did you ever have a chance to sit down at all, or at press conferences, talk with Scott Drew? And if yes, what was your impression?
I've never sat down with him like one-on-one, but like I said, I've been around him, at press conferences when he was up here when they played at Rupp, that time where he press conference after the game, and then in the NCAA tournament, with press conference. I've always been, impressed with Scott, with the job he's done. He seems to me you guys know him a lot better than I do, a very optimistic, positive guy. I can see why he's a good recruiter. Because of the message, that he sends. I think another thing, too, that works in his favor here, Kentucky fans are tired of having teams that are so young year after year and then they're gone. And I think, it looks to me the last few years, especially that championship year, Scott was able to bring in transfers and build a team, build a program. And I think that's what Kentucky fans are looking for. So, and the people that I know who know Scott and who I respect as good basketball people, they have a lot of respect for Scott, for the job he's done there and the kind of person he is.
Just like what you do covering Kentucky and college athletics. John, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your patience on the inconvenience. We appreciate it. Good luck with it moving forward one way or the other, and we'll probably be talking to you again soon.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
John Clay, columnist, Lexington Herald-Leader, covering the Kentucky Wildcats and his side of the story on what's being said there, or what they are expecting, or the story out of Lexington. Also, Keith Taylor covers Kentucky. He will join us a little bit later on in the 5 o'clock hour. Plus, we'll have, again, Rob Bolton, our Masters picks at about 5:30. Guys, it's good to be back on the air.
Yeah, it was exciting. You people should have heard the traffic out there that we thought we were going to have a legit road rage incident. So glad that we're not going to have to worry about that, at least right now.
Yeah, we had a transformer blew. It did knock out the power. Craig walked out there when there was a lot of honking and horns and all that. I was worried you weren't going to come back in.
I think you're a bit overplaying what was going on outside, but yeah, I walked outside and there were people honking because there's a four-way stop that suddenly doesn't have any traffic lights, so that's going to happen. But yeah, that is behind us now, and glad that everything's back to normal. Do want to pass along a Baylor basketball note here that's pretty important, and it doesn't have necessarily anything to do with Scott Drew, although it does, but I wouldn't read too much into this. I assume that some people probably will, though, but Baylor freshman Yves Missy has announced that he will forgo his remaining college eligibility after 1 year at Baylor and enter the 2024 NBA draft. He is a guy who could very well go if things were to break really well for him in the lottery, but more or less a top 20 pick, I think, is mostly what I've seen him pegged as. You never quite know this far out from the draft how that will all shake out. But Yves Missy, who is a potential top 20 first-round guy, is officially entering the NBA draft. So there you go. One less Baylor Bear on the roster. Although if Scott Drew was not involved at all, John Calipari was still coaching at Kentucky. This was an announcement that was going to be expected to be made at some point or another.
I agree.
Regardless, he was going to have to announce. Same thing with Jacoby Walter. So the timing can certainly play into suspicions, but I don't really think that the two are connected here. We'll see. But this was definitely a decision that was going to be announced one way or the other.
All right, so we've been trying to, as much as we can, except for the interruption, the Scott Drew, as people wait for a decision one way or the other. He may not ever really say much about it, but Baylor, of course, is where he is, was in Waco earlier, as we discussed, having lunch with a very, very high-level donor and also sponsor, Eric Shiro from Alliance Bank. What is happening, we don't know other than what we've told you. As we continue to dig, it's great to get different views. Ashley Hodge, John Clay. We'll hear from Keith Taylor. He covers Kentucky, as I mentioned, in about 25 minutes or so. FKN Truth, that's all I'm going to say. That's his name in the chat room. I happen to love Baylor fans because they didn't put up with Louisville fans' nonsense. Laugh out loud. He is a Kentucky fan. Also, some of you are asking about, what is next? That's a great question. We will find out ourselves. Matt, I like Drew living in Lexington. I work here. It's a bad fit. Only talking heads are saying Scott Drew.
Yeah, I mean, it's to each their own on their opinions right now, or their opinions that are based on complete, speculation, or based on the reports that have been out there that have been verified. So if you believe that way, totally entitled to your opinion. If others who clearly believe differently, totally entitled to their opinion. I think we all just want to see what's going to shake out here. And I think all signs point to, in the next 24 hours, something's going to break one way or the other. I do park myself in the camp that I just feel like Scott's a strange personality fit for Kentucky and Lexington. But I know that he's a smart enough guy that he could manage that. But that's something that I do find is just such a departure from what Calipari was like, and that's maybe what you're looking for if you're a Kentucky fan. You don't want another Calipari-type guy. You want somebody that's a bit different, but his personality clearly fits well here and has for 20 years. He knows the lay of the land. He knows what he can do here. Again, the attraction, though, of Kentucky is out there and obvious, and anybody who has a competitive pulse would sit there and look long and hard at that job. So we said yesterday, and I maintain, I lean towards him staying at Baylor. I wouldn't place a bet on that at Vegas. I'm not confident in that. It's just my own personal just feel of the situation, but I'm not saying that as like a prediction because I really don't know. I would not be shocked at all if he takes the Kentucky job, just based on being a competitor, the pedigree of that program, and wanting to be a part of that atmosphere. So, yeah, we're all eagerly awaiting some news, but we're going to have to wait a little longer.
Some of you are Kentucky fans that have joined us here on 365 Sports. Names that have also been brought up, Bruce Pearl, Chris Beard, the former Texas for a day, a half or whatever, UNLV, and now at Ole Miss. Anthony Eason, Mr. G. Beard comes with a lot of stuff, no matter if it's true or not. Let's see, Jimmy James. UK fans need to be quiet and stop running people off. There was one that we saw, and I don't have it in front of me, but that this is Mitch Barnhart. This is a big moment for him, just like it is for Mack Rhodes at Baylor, who's dealt with coaches either leaving or being looked at by others, whether it's been Dave Aranda or Scott Drew, and also, of course, Kim Mulkey.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Mack Rhodes is I saw a post on our boards, Sikkim365.com, saying, if Scott Drew leaves, should Mack get fired or should he, be heavily criticized? And I go back again to yesterday. This is not a situation where Baylor's not offering him the money. This is not a situation where they're saying, no, Scott, we can't do that for you. They're saying, everything we've got, it's yours. Everything that we can possibly reasonably offer you, we have already offered you, or we're offering it to you right now. So this is not a financial decision. This is not a arena decision. This is not an anything but just what challenge does Scott Drew want to take on? Does he want to continue to build on what he built from scratch 20 years ago and turn from nothingness, a hellscape, into a national championship winning program and see where he can continue to take that? Or does he want to take on the challenge of the ultimate blue blood in college basketball? And only Scott Drew and maybe his wife really know the answer to that question. And I don't even know if they know for sure right now which direction they want to go. But obviously time's ticking for all parties, and you've got to make a decision sooner rather than later. I do think it would be fascinating if Scott Drew does not take this job. What does happen at Kentucky?
Yeah.
Now, I think there'll be a semi-meltdown. I think there's some that want somebody else. They're not sold on Scott Drew, so there'll be a little bit of that. But I think you have to then look up and go, this now could become something that takes a while.
Replacing Mac Brown at Texas.
Yeah, similar to that.
It's very, it feels like that because the fans have Danny Hurley, Billy Donovan, Scott Drew,
Nick Saban, Jimbo, Jimbo, but Urban Meyer.
Jimbo, they wanted, it was Nick Saban, Jimbo, Art Briles were their top three, and all three of them said no. And I don't even know how far they got down the road with two of those three. We do know that Art Briles was interested in the job. that it came about, but it didn't work out
because he had an unreasonable demand, which was basically no hiring process, just give me the job. Yeah. And obviously Texas made a very smart decision in not going that route because that's a big what if. But anyways, that didn't happen. And I think Danny Hurley, you still see some of he didn't say no exactly, so there's still some hope. And I know there's been some sprinkling of that's still sort of alive. I watched the Billy Donovan answers to Kentucky questions from yesterday, and he sure as hell did not turn down the idea that he would go to Kentucky. I
had a former Baylor coach on staff with Scott Drew tell me he did everything but say no.
Yeah, he even brought up people say that recruiting's a different animal, and he started to explain why that wouldn't be the challenge that you think that it is for him. And certainly it's a different era from when his Florida teams were wreaking havoc in the early 2000s. But he was, if anything, throwing gasoline on the idea that he would be open to Kentucky. And I don't know if y'all watched the Bulls, but they suck. So
they're really good at alley-oops and dunks.
No, they're not. That highlight from last night is one of the biggest yakety sax moments I've seen in basketball in a long time. The failed alley-oop, you got to watch that from the Chicago Bulls last night. But he didn't stamp it out at all. So, I wonder how much interest is still there on his part. But let's say, okay, Danny Hurley's going to stay at UConn because he's won back-to-back titles, and why would you leave? Billy Donovan, he's going to really ride it out with this Bulls squad. And Scott Drew decides that, home is where his heart is here in Waco. Then what happens? That would be really fascinating. I know some of the names you just brought up, but the anarchist in me wants to see that happen, to see where does this go after that. But Kentucky fans, I hope you have an answer and don't have to go down that path, although I hope that answer is not Scott Drew.
Well, when you do that and things go all of a sudden sideways, you're still going to end up with a pretty good basketball coach, probably a damn good one, but man, all of a sudden that could send you into never land again, because it's just not everything's on the same page. Retired stockbroker, when John Clay or someone earlier said that reasonable Kentucky fans, isn't that an oxymoron? FKN Truth, I want to say your name, but that's good enough, is a huge Kentucky fan. Scott Drew He'd love to see Scott Drew, but thinks it'll end up staying in Waco. Matt, I like Drew. I live in Lexington. I work here. Like he said, it's not a bad fit. It's a bad fit. I'm sorry. Only talking heads are saying that right now. Multiple people have said that in the chat. I mentioned that earlier, and it was put up again by somebody else.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's the thing that sticks out to me. It's not the religious factor either. I know there's plenty of godly people in Kentucky, but I just think that the bubble that you're in is awfully different. Now, do I think Scott Drew could deal with that? Yeah, I do. Do I think is that juice worth the squeeze? Again, I think it just comes down to it's not about him not being built for it. He's built for it. I feel like he'd go in the SEC, and again, I think I said this yesterday as well, but everybody thinks he's just Mr. Ho-hum and smiley face. He'll pull a pocket knife out if he has to, and go to war. Like, he's not a pushover. He's not a dude that's just going to get bullied or anything like that. Don't let the nice guy exterior fool you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think he can go in there and rumble with the best of them in the SEC and have a lot of success there. It's just a matter of, what does he want to do? And that's simply all it is. It's not money. It's not recruiting. It's not any of that stuff, in my opinion. It's just the fit. And I do wonder about the fit for him. I think he could handle it, but do you want to take that on given what you already have? And that's the question he's obviously debating right now, his wife and other confidants.
All right, there are some other stories. Craig mentioned Yves Missy. He's declared for the NBA draft. He's a very athletic big man who is just learning the game. At times you say, my God, he's amazing. And at times it looked like he was a true freshman who had not played a lot of basketball. We'll have details on the John Calipari contract with Arkansas and also hear from Keith Taylor from his perspective on Drew, Kentucky, and also Baylor. This is 365 Sports. It's Dodge Power Shot Days, continuing at Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco with some of the hottest deals of the year, starting with the new 2024 Dodge Hornet GT all-wheel drive for $29,999. Or how about the 2023, the new Dodge Charger SXT all-wheel drive for $30,990. And the 2023 Dodge Challenger GT at $31,487. How about the 2023 Dodge Charger SXT for $28,925 during Dodge Power Shot Days? If you like extreme, they've got extreme power with the Demon 170 with over 1,000 horsepower. Pop a wheelie straight from the manufacturer and also run on jet fuel. Allen Samuels has one of those last ones left in the country. Call it the last call model, as Dodge will not build the V8 Hemis in 2024. If you want cutting-edge technology, come by and drive the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited 4xe. Save over $13,000 in values. 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4xe and save over $15,000 in values. These two world-class SUVs run on battery or gas with world-class technology. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340, east of 84 in Waco. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com with me, David Smoak. And tell you what, you guys keep rolling along. You do have yet another date, correct, for an online and live auction?
Yes, our next online and live auction will be Thursday, April 25th.
We've discussed how this has been unique and how people have reacted to it. Has that momentum continued as you've done more?
Yes, it's kind of half and half. We'll have a good amount of people there that are from the area, and then we have probably 40% that we ship out, and everybody that I've delivered locally to has talked about how much fun they had, and they want to know when the next one's going to be. We've gotten great feedback from the people that we've shipped to. They're all just so excited about this event, and they can't wait for the next one to happen.
Premium grade East Texas beef. Customers don't have to go out and buy their beef. TexasBeefHouse.com. From their family and their ranch to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
We are working on Keith Taylor. And in fact, he's calling us right back. These are the numbers for John Calipari in Arkansas. From Brandon Marcello, $7 million salary, a signing bonus, which, by the way, was probably the money that Eric Musselman paid to leave, a yearly retention bonus, the NCAA tournament, the appearance, round of 2, Sweet 16, Final Four national title, a lot of perks. Rollover contract opportunities. There are the benefits with tickets to home games, to other Arkansas sporting events, 2 cars, club memberships at a couple of beautiful courses and clubs. And then the buyout. Arkansas, if they fired Cal, would pay 75% of whatever's remaining on the contract. And Cal buyout would be $6 million. That's from Brandon Marcello based on a Freedom of Information Act request from 247 Sports. We're joined by Keith Taylor. He covers Kentucky. We had John Clay. And, of course, we've been discussing Scott Drew, Baylor, Kentucky, and a lot more. Keith, thank you very much. You've been very much on top of things from your perspective as well. Where do you sit right now based on what you're being told?
I think it's a waiting game for a decision from Scott, from what I can understand. Like I reported last night, I think an offer has been made to him. And I think he's just thinking it over with his family like any other coach would do and kind of figure out what they want to do moving forward. That's what I can gather at the moment.
Keith, if it's not Scott Drew, then where do you think the search turns from there?
If it's not Scott Drew, I'm hearing Danny Holy, but that's a long shot in my opinion. This reminds me of, I think it was 2007 before Kentucky, well, it might have been in 2009 before they had John Calipari, one of those 2 years. Billy Donovan was on top of his game, and he had won 2 championships at Florida, and Kentucky was looking for a coach right in the midst of him having very big-time success. And this kind of reminds me of this scenario here, is they couldn't get Billy, and Billy wanted to finish the job he had at Florida. So that kind of reminds me of the scenario with Danny Hurley. That's just my opinion. And I'm hearing maybe Donovan back in the mix. Is he happy in the NBA? Is he having the success he wanted? Does he want to get back in the college game? If he wants to get back in the college game, I think now would be the opportunity. But based on what happened during those 2 searches and 12, 15, 18 years ago, we just don't know what Kentucky's thinking about that.
Keith, obviously Scott Drew has a legacy here, the 21 years, what he's done from what was a dumpster fire to national title. And even though the last 3 years have ended earlier than anyone thought, it's a program that every year could be among the top 10 and a team that has a chance to at least compete for a national title. Besides the obvious, a massive arena, Rupp Arena, a crazy fan base in a good and bad way, what does Kentucky bring to the table you think that will be the final straw if he decides to move to Lexington?
I think, in my opinion, Kentucky's tradition. I mean, Kentucky is in the upper echelon. It's a blue blood program. And in my opinion, who would not want to come to Kentucky if given an opportunity? If it's a destination job for him, which is what I've been told, then I think you have to look at it. I mean, Kentucky Kentucky has a tradition. They have 8 national titles, a program that Coach Rupp built, and it's been sustained. Calipari did a great job in the first 7, 8 years, 9. And I think it was time, his time eventually came up to leave and go somewhere else. But I think Kentucky has tradition. They have a following. I think Kentucky has a following that probably, this is not discounting Baylor, but Kentucky travels well. I mean, shoot, you go to Nashville to the SEC tournament, it's going to be 90-95% UK fans. You go to an NCAA tournament game when they're on top of their game, you're looking at 80-85%. I mean, you're looking at, they will draw. Kentucky draws. They draw at home and they draw away.
Do you think that, I mean, John Calipari said this, they needed a fresh voice, that the way that Coach Drew has kind of morphed through the years over what system he needs to run, if he needs more, one and dones, or if he needs more transfers. Calipari wasn't necessarily doing it. He was kind of sticking to the same plan. They need somebody who's a little bit more flexible.
I believe that's what Kentucky fans are yearning for, and I'm glad you brought that up. In the beginning with Calipari, people didn't mind the one and done. It was working. They were getting to the Elite Eight, Final Fours, winning championships. But I think over the course of time, even with the transfer portal, the players got to become older. I mean, I've watched several games where Kentucky was basically playing, it was boys against men. So, and I think Kentucky fans are yearning for the 2 and 3 year players development. They want players that are here for more than 12 months or whatever. They want that familiarity. I've been around the program for a long time. I grew up watching the Wildcats, and people like Kenny Walker, those type of players. I grew up watching them. Their name was brought up for 4 years. You knew your players, you knew who they were. And I think Kentucky yearns for that. I don't think we'll ever get back totally to that. But I think with the transfer portal at least 2 years, getting a couple of 3 years out of your freshmen, developing players, I think that's what they're yearning for. That's what they want.
In your opinion, is Drew one of the few people who, with what is happening with the portal, those who committed who are now uncommitted, those who are asking for a release, and then again, those who might leave with attrition, is he one of maybe 3 or 4 guys that could get in there, hold that roster together, and actually make it better?
I think he can. I think the big piece of that is he has got 21 years of coaching, so he's adapted to all kinds of scenarios. I mean, look at Coach K. Before he retired, he had to adapt to the one and done, and he did, and it changed the course of his finish line of coaching. And I think Drew would be able to do that and bridge that gap. I think he understands NIL is a big piece of that. You got NIL, in Kentucky. Kentucky has the resources. I mean, you go back to what you asked me earlier. Practice facilities, the facilities are phenomenal. Renovating Memorial Coliseum, which doesn't have anything to do with the men's program, but it just tells you how much the university is committed to athletics. And I can't speak for Baylor, but I mean, I think the resources here are, second to none, especially in the SEC.
Keith, explain to us and describe a Kentucky basketball fan.
They're crazy. In a good and bad way. The Kentucky basketball fans, you got to understand, Kentucky, we don't have a pro team. We don't have anything like Texas may have. You got the Dallas Cowboys, you got NBA teams down there. We don't have nothing. We just got Kentucky basketball. And so Kentucky fans treat Kentucky basketball like it's the only thing going in the state of Kentucky. And it is. I mean, we don't have a pro team. And I think that's what makes it very unique. They're so invested in the program. They care about the program. They want to see it succeed. They want to get to Elite Eight. They want Final Fours. Look, they know you can't win every game, but they want to be in the picture in March. They want to be one of those teams in March. And that's why I said in the early years of Calipari, we were one of those teams. And it just kind of started falling off in 2020, 21. You had a losing season, and then you get back, you get Oscar Sheboy and those teams, and losing in the SEC tournament, losing in the NCAA tournament. Fans are not used to that. If they have a good team, they're used to making runs in a tournament. And I think that's what they're wanting, is somebody who can bring back, that excitement and getting the team to the at least the Final Four in the tournament and championship. They like championship too. But I think, we've only got Kentucky basketball here. I'm telling you. I grew up in it, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to cover it. So that's what we have.
Did you say that Kentucky fans don't think they have to win every game? I know what you mean by that, but it's a tough base, right? A fan base.
Yeah, they expect you to win every game. I should have said, and I'll make that clear. They expect to win every game and win by 30 or 40 points. But I think they also realize that you can't do that. I mean, Calipari came within a whimper of doing it with that 2014-15 team. But true. I mean, that's true. I mean, they want to win every game, but I think they understand that you can't. But
yeah. Is there a dark horse that we haven't mentioned as Coach Drew stays at Baylor?
A lot of people, believe this or not, a lot of people, they wouldn't mind if Rick Pitino came back. And
holy hell!
I remember. Yeah, I know that's the name that keeps popping up in my Twitter feed, and you got to remember, Pitino took over a program that was on probation. He brought the excitement back. He built it back up. National championship, 96, runner-up 97, W wins at 98. So you got to have a good run there. And I believe Pitino has said his biggest mistake is leaving Kentucky. But if I had to throw a dark horse, like one that's not even in the picture or even be considered, I would say Rick Pitino.
Wow.
That's just my opinion, because people in Kentucky, they still remember what he did here. There was a lot of animosity when he went to Louisville, and there was a lot of people that liked that. But I think he's been gone enough away from Louisville that people kind of put that aside, in my opinion. But he would be a dark horse, in my opinion. Jay Wright would be another one.
Well, that would be the mother load, even ahead of maybe anybody else that Hurley or whoever else. Drew, he's been covering Kentucky since the mid-'90s. From the Kentucky Today, Keith Taylor on the Scott Drew, Kentucky, Baylor, etc. Keith, good luck with the story going forward. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Keith Taylor with us, John Clay with us to give us a different perspective from the Baylor Kentucky point of view on Baylor head coach Scott Drew. All right, when we come back, it is the week of the Masters. Is there anything we need to clear out that we haven't taken before the break? We'll come back with Rob Bolton.
Nothing. Well, the UCF football news, if you
All right, this is good. Yeah, we can throw this. I want to get Northwestern if you have that.
Oh, I got that too.
All right, this is the helmet that UCF will wear during the spring football game. It's at a local children's hospital that helped design the helmets. That is what it will look like. Good for them. Thought we'd pop that out there for the Knights. And, of course, UCF, the spring game. There's a lot of spring games going on this weekend, and then, of course, there's a handful of others the next one, and then finally the wrap up the month of April.
Yeah, the kids from this hospital designed the logos for the UCF spring game, the Orlando Health Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children. So they had the players go and ask the kids of kind of what style and the design and all of that. And so they helped in the creative part of designing those uniforms. I like the UCF changes things up. You know, not always, like I don't think I probably love every single design, but I think I like pretty much all that I've seen. They do a great job with that, and those are certainly, you can, especially the one on the right. It's definitely got like a kid's help design that kind of flavor to it. But hey, it's a spring game. Have fun with it. You're not Alabama and like having to wear the same thing all the time, and that's part of their uniqueness is those threads. So why not do it for the spring game as well? I think that's cool, and especially the meaning behind it.
So Northwestern is building a new football stadium, and they're going to play the majority of the home games in the next couple of years at a temporary on-campus stadium next to Lake Michigan. Pretty unique. Northwestern trying to get their facilities up to par. Of course, they had the coaching transition with Pat Fitzgerald. Temporary stadium will also be used for soccer and also for lacrosse, but that's where they'll play their home games, or most of them, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen the facility they have on the lake?
Yeah,
it's better than some people's actual real football stadiums. I'm curious of how it's going to work, but Adam said that they're working with a company that has done NASCAR seating, and they did some seating for events in downtown Chicago, so it's somebody familiar with the area and knows how to kind of do the temporary thing. That's going to be cool looking whenever that's done, but that stadium should also be pretty amazing as well. It's rare to get a new stadium unless you're like a pro team, so that's pretty cool and a kind of cool fix for it in the meantime while it's all getting done up.
The all-time leading wins in women's basketball, Tara Van Dever, has announced her retirement after 38 years.
I thought you were joking.
Well, you know what?
I thought you were having a stroke.
Yeah.
I think I was. Announced her retirement. She's an all-timer. 38 years, won 3 national titles, 14 Final Fours, and will continue to work within the Stanford Athletic Department. But Vanderveer is gone. She's retiring, moving on, and you wonder if we will see a little bit of this because of what's happening with college athletics. Not trying to say it's a trend yet, but we're seeing a little bit of this. Nick Saban, what we see here in women's basketball, and also 38 years. It's time to go enjoy life after putting up 1,216 victories in her career.
Yeah, I think this is just a matter of you've been somewhere for a really long time. You're the all-time wins leader. You've won national titles. You've done a lot of what there is to do, if not all that there is to do. And I know that in response to the initial tweet last night, I think it was like Stuart Mandel or somebody, I'm sure others had similar comments, but was talking about just Stanford now and their place in the big picture of does Tara Vanderveer want to go travel to Chapel Hill, North Carolina on a weeknight to go play a basketball game? I doubt it. I bet she really preferred going to Eugene and to, Corvallis and places like that, as opposed to now going to Dallas one week to go play SMU and then go play in Chapel Hill all the way on the other side of the country. You add NIL into that, and Stanford obviously has a lot of money, but their academics are a different breed. Some people talk about academics, others walk that walk, and Stanford's definitely one that walks that walk, and so that's made it more difficult on them when it comes to transfer portal and things like that. So there are challenges facing that athletic program that they haven't necessarily had to face as much in recent years, especially the new ACC component to that. So I think that just leads into, also just being older and probably you've done it pretty much at all at this point. So those all come together and combine for the exit of one of the greatest women's basketball coaches of all time, one of the best college basketball coaches of all time. And I had this to show the other day, or to bring up the other day, and we didn't get around to doing it, and now I probably don't have the link saved anymore, but she's right there as far as most national championships. She's not at the top, but I think Dawn Staley maybe tied her the other night, I believe. With
Mulkey with 3.
Mulkey has 4.
4 because of LSU.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, how soon
so
I forget.
I think, and I don't know if off the top of my head, I'll have to look back, but I think off the top of my head, okay, here we go. I found it. So Tara Vanderveer has 3 national championships, which Dawn Staley just tied, okay? Right above that, Kim Mulkey with 4, 3 at Baylor, 1 at LSU, and then Pat Summitt, 8 when she was at Tennessee, and then there's Gino Auriemma at UConn, who's got 11 national championships. So, now Tara Vanderveer steps out of the way. Odds favor Dawn Staley's probably going to win 4 and probably more, and I think now that makes it very interesting that Mulkey and Staley are going to have this little race to see who ends up with the most, and they're going to have to, play each other in conference and and that rivalry will only continue to gain steam. So, definitely a legend stepping away from the game there. And that should be I think they have probably an in-house, I believe from what I was reading, somebody who's been set up.
They're working on getting that
so,
done.
So that's not going to be a big search or anything. But, great career.
Why is Staley and Mulkey so competitive? Because they're fighting for the same turf, the same conference, the same things, winning national titles.
Both very proud women, too.
Yeah, and they hate each other's guts.
Yeah, when we come back, Rob Bolton on the Masters, the week of the Masters, and we'll come back with a picture of the Champions Dinner from last night, and then Rob and a new sponsor to be introduced again. This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street. I used part of my gift certificate the other day, and I didn't use the whole thing because, like an idiot, I brought my wife, and she goes, "You don't need 5 things." And I was like, well, I don't need anything. I want 5 things. But I did get some nice vodka there, and I got her a bottle of wine, and I got something else. I can't remember, but it was nice to be there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine and go and look. Oh, I got some beer. I went and I got some beer. I have not tried it yet because I put it in the fridge, and then we left and went somewhere else. But it is called Texas Leader, and it's a Texas beer. It's a local craft Texas beer. I can't wait to try it. It's like a German Bock. I can't wait for that. And that's the cool thing. You walk in there, they've got all these different beers every season. They churn the roster. We're in the springtime now. There were even some of them, some of the Texas beers had Eclipse-themed beers. I should have tried one of those, but most of them were like dark IPAs. That's not really my thing. But Riverbend Liquor and Wine had those great selections, and it's awesome to go in there and see those, whether it is the new bourbons they have. And they had a big, beautiful display of some bourbons I've never even heard of before, and I consider myself well-versed on the subject. So if you're a fan of bourbon, you're a fan of craft beer, that's where you got to go. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, or if you're downtown on Franklin, downtown, 2 locations to serve you.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Emery Winter's going to join us for this segment. Garrett Ross obviously here. Jack McKenzie, we appreciate you. Rob Bolton, PGAtour.com. It's the week. Here's the Champions Dinner picture from last night with John Rahm in the menu with all the former champions there, from Nicklaus and Player to, Charles Cootie, among many others who are still there, Marco Mira, and some of the young greats too. Rob, thank you very much. It is time. Let me ask you this, and we'll get to our picks, and we want to get your thoughts on those picks too. How much does the weather that we see that's about to drench Augusta National change what the players have seen so far this week?
Hey, guys. Always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks again for the invite. Great to hear your voice, David.
You too,
Yeah,
buddy.
so the course was setting up to be fast and firm, and it won't start out that way. Yeah, that would be the headline on Thursday. Sorry, but they'll get it going by the weekend. So yeah, big changes in store. It would be a shock if there's not a delay, and potentially an extensive delay. They're going to have to clean the course. They're going to have to get the guys warmed up again, and then they'll go play the tournament, which is why they're there in the first place. So yeah, unfortunately, that's what happens when you deal with an outside sport,
All right, so how much do what they have with those air suction machines underneath the greens? It's rain is rain. I've been there when it's rain. It can still get very messy, although they don't ever want to say there's mud at Augusta National or anything other than green grass. How much do the undulations and what they have underneath help get through that faster than perhaps, and some other PGA courses have done that too?
Yeah, the sub-air system,
yeah,
I think, is the official product or menu, whatever it is. There's a sub-air, and that thing you can hear it sort of where the old driving range used to be, in the middle of that looks like a park between 18 and 9, and it's humming pretty good when it's on. That's the thing about this course. It's just, and for fans who aren't aware, or golf, aficionados, just the fact that they can dial in the greens to whatever speed they want them to be. They don't tell you what it is. You got to figure that out on your own. That's sort of the part of the beauty that I don't know, that's sort of a throwback feel before we could measure everything. I love that. But the beauty of it from a setup standpoint is that they can make it uniform. So you never hear guys saying, 12 was run a little bit slower because it's down by Race Creek, than say 1, which is sort of an elevated green back by the clubhouse. So yeah, that's the good thing about the tournament. But when you get this much rain, those things will be cranking on 10, no doubt about it, to make sure everything is uniform by the time the guys are on the course.
All right, remind me how many players we all pick.
We
3
pick
or 4?
4.
4. All right, we have 4 of us in the studio: Emery, Craig, Paul, me, and then you, Rob. Rob, we've never done this before. We're going to let you lead off.
Oh.
We've missed you. And then I'm just going to pick, I'll pick 5th. I'm just going to put myself 5th. You start off if you want.
I would love to start off with Scotty Scheffler, so I think I'll start off with Scotty Scheffler.
All right. Craig, you're next.
Okay. Give me Rory.
Mr. Catalina.
Brooks.
Your birthday's next week, so
Yes.
I'll give you the chance to.
Brooks Koepka.
Emery.
John Rahm.
The defending champion. I'm going to take a guy that has this game like in play right now, and I'm going to say Xander Schauffele is my pick. And now I'm stuck because this is where you have like
This is where you got to prepare, Smokey.
No, I got my list right here. Vander Schauffele, and I'm going to take Wyndham Clark. And now it's Emery.
Yeah, I'll take Will Zalatoris.
Okay. Played with Tiger in a practice round earlier this week. And now back to you, Paul.
Hideki Matsuyama.
Hideki, all right. Craig?
Patrick Cantley.
Been quiet, Rob. He's been quiet. We'll kind of analyze all that. And now you get 2 picks.
Well, Paul took my guy. Not that I expected Matsuyama to fall all the way to me here at 10th. But love the game that Shane Lowry is playing right now, so he'll be my next selection here in the second round. And then to round out, or let's see, to go with, I'm going to stick with the work here. I mean, although I'm going to jump over my 8, who is next available. Matt Fitzpatrick will be
there you
my
go.
selection.
Makes sense. All right. Back to you, Craig Smoak.
Let me go with Keegan Bradley.
I will go back to your 8th, and I will take Russell Henley. Since you took the guy, I was hoping you were going to take Russell Henley so I could take Matt Fitzpatrick, but, turnabout's fair play.
Mr. Emery.
That all works out.
I'm going to take Victor Hovland.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? He dropped. He's going through some crazy with his swing because he's always tinkering with his swing. I'm going to take Connors and Brian Harman. I said it. Back to you, Emery.
I'm going to go with Ludwig.
All right. Craig? Oh, Paul.
Gosh.
We all know he wants Gerald Hatton. Do it.
No, never.
How
never.
about
Paid off so well for you in the past.
No.
How about the audio, Rob, that he popped off last weekend when he hit a bad shot? That was glorious.
You say you want me to repeat it here?
No,
I got you.
No. Yeah. Well, you can. We're on YouTube.
Yeah. I'll take Jordan Spieth.
Damn. All right, Craig, and then Rob wraps it up.
Somebody say Sam Burns.
Nope.
Okay.
Good pick, Sam Burns.
You
and
did.
Then Rob, you.
This will feel like I planted number 14 in the power ranking because he's been one of the best players in the last several months worldwide, no matter how you want to define it. Joaquin Niemann.
Yeah, he's been really good on Live. No question. All right. Break it down, Mr. PGAtour.com.
Yeah. First of all, David, I'm shocked you didn't either take Tiger or Phil with your last
I'm
pick,
done
because
with
that's
them.
who you are.
I'm not done with them because that old school, like I have with them. But no, Tiger, I don't know how he lasts, especially if it's sloppy and stuff on Thursday with his legs. So, but I would love to, and I would be thrilled if he's on the leaderboard on Sunday afternoon.
You could make a fifth team here that would include Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Jason Day. I mean, these guys are still out there. If we have to go another couple of rounds, and we'd be fine with it. But that's part of the beauty of this field is that it's really, really, really top heavy, and most of these guys are going to make the cut. So we should do very well as a pool here. The rules are the same, right? Everybody's got to make the cut for you to have a chance. So. That's the idea. There's a couple of interesting little injuries that are bothering some guys. Ludwig Ober has a knee. Not exactly sure to what extent. It kept him out of the par 3 contest, kept him practicing a little bit lightly this week. Maybe that'll do him. Maybe that'll talk about the turnabout for fair play. Maybe that'll do him some good not getting onto the course until it's actually not the greatest conditions. And a guy from Sweden who's grown up and playing in not the greatest conditions, suddenly he may look really good there. So, Emery, that's a great pick in that context. We just have to see how he emerges from it. And Hovland, just before that, David, you said it. He's tinkering. He's just in a state of mind that just is unfamiliar for us, for him. And he's so thoughtful and transparent and honest and forthright with everything he says. Sometimes I wish maybe. Not for our perspective, but sometimes for their perspective. Maybe just keep it under wraps, figure it out, and get out there and get after it. But this is how these guys process these days. I mean, we appreciate it as fans. But Hovland's gone into so much detail. And I wonder if it's doing him any good. He's spending hours upon hours trying to figure it out. I have him to miss the cut this week, honestly. And he doesn't miss cuts. So he's one of the guys in the center of my crosshairs, my spotlight, that sort of thing. Paul, your lineup there, I love it. Obviously, kind of went right down my power rankings. I can't say anything negative about that. And I just love sort of the disdain in Craig's voice every time it's picked. It's one of the most entertaining parts of my week. Every time I connect with you guys, every time Craig makes a pick, I just sit back and enjoy it. And then certainly, somehow, way, shape, or form, he ends up winning one of these at some point, and he does. It's like he's just like the most, the most accidental player who does really well way too often than he thinks he's going to play.
Throwing darts blind.
That's one of
Rob.
the reasons I love this.
Yeah, throwing darts blind is kind of what it is. Throwing darts blind is what I'm doing, basically.
Hey,
yeah.
That's a strategy too, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before I forget, we'd like to welcome our new sponsor, golfpartnerusa.com, to the show, and they bring you all of our golf segments now. So I put the link up in the chat room. The world's largest online golf retailer, golfpartnerusa.com. But Rob, Tiger Woods is 48. He's got the injuries. He made the cut last year and then had to stop. And he's always made the cut. He makes the cut at Augusta. And he says if everything goes perfect, he can win. But it just doesn't go perfect for him anymore, does it?
No, and he's on the record. You can pull it up if you wanted, that he doesn't play to make cuts. He plays to win. So he's now on the precipice of setting the all-time consecutive cuts made record at the Masters. Currently has the share of the record with 23, going for 24. I have him also to miss the cut. The odds are not necessarily great to invest in it, but they're actually getting a little bit longer as the week prolongs here. So that's a good thing in terms of expectations for him to play well. But for me, anybody who's ever been to Augusta National, I've been there. I spent a day there back in 2012. My dogs were barking, and I don't have the surgery that he has. I'm not a professional athlete and all that, and I wore comfortable shoes. It's an incredibly difficult walk, and the fact that he's going to try to win this thing, it's not going to happen. The fact that he's going to try to make the cut, okay, the cut is favorable again for guys who know how to get around for a couple of rounds. My half joke, is that there should be a prop for him to complete 36 holes. The grit that it would require for him to do that across 2 days, the weather, all these sorts of things, it would be a heck of an accomplishment. Anything after that would be absolutely absurd and insane and an incredible story.
Hey, let me ask you this. When Paul took Spieth, and I was like, Jordan Spieth, he won it in 15. You think he'd reel off 2 to 4 of these? We know Rory's in a slump. Major tournaments, he's knocking on the door. And then all of a sudden, you know who wasn't picked? Bryson DeChambeau.
Yeah.
Who you would think that course would just absolutely be something that for him would be an automatic. And that you mentioned Morikawa, Jason Day, Tiger, Phil, among others. Bryson DeChambeau, is he playing well over at LIV?
Playing well enough, but here's the thing about him, and this is you could probably write a Shakespeare play, 2024 edition, on his fit or non-fit into this course. Course requires a lot more feel than he's been willing to give it. He's acknowledged that. He's the scientist, right? Although he acknowledges that he plays with a lot of art as well. He's tried to measure the green speeds. He's tried to solve the equation, as I've said. There's no equation to solve. It's be a golfer. And he's not entirely fully formed as one yet. He's an incredible talent. But Augusta National doesn't reward his skill set yet. How many times have we seen these guys? It takes some time. And for him, it's more about the 6 inches in between his ears and what he's willing to do and how he's willing to change to be a golfer. It would be one of the most incredible stories for him to win this tournament because it's the opposite. The course set up fine. The fact that you can spray it anywhere and bomb it and all that sorts of things, fine. It's understanding the greens and sinking the putts when he needs to. He can do all of those sorts of things too, but as a combination of variables on this track in this event, his press conference, if he wins the thing, might be the most compelling interview of the year. because then he'll explain how he was able to do it.
All right, so I had a couple of people contact me. They went, Corey Connors? He can hammer it. And Harman, of course, is a guy that, it depends. He's very efficient. He's played well. He won the Open. I know it's a completely different course than me. He's longer than some people think. Which of those two is my biggest risk, Connors or Brian Harman?
So Connors is one of my sleepers. He's had 3 top 10s in the last 4. It's a tremendous pick. He was on my list. You got to him before I could get to him. I didn't think he'd go that soon. I thought last pick of the draft, I'll get him. Nope. You got him in the 3rd round. So Harman would be the riskier of the two, only because he just doesn't have the right track record.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, at Georgia, and yes, coming off the major. Harman is almost in the 3rd phase of his career. Even when he won the Open, he said, I don't know why I haven't been better enough. He's always been right around the top 50 of the world, just inside it, just outside it. Now he's inside it for a while. He's playing in the majors for a while. He's more comfortable. He's gotten the monkey off his back if he ever felt there was one in the majors. I mean, he's the type of guy you wouldn't expect to win a major, and lo and behold, now he has one. So he's going to be a different cat out there. So I love the angle because this is the first major he's playing as a major champion. So he's peacocking around that place this week for a little guy, and I'm here for it. I love every bit of it. But yes, he would be the riskier of those two guys by a long shot.
Do you think he's going to drive Brooks Koepka crazy with his waggles?
No, I think visually we may see something to argue that point. I think internally though, Bryson's enough of a pro to leave it alone.
All right, Paul.
I'd like to believe that at least.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It's kind of interesting and unique.
Emery, you have a question for Rob? You're on the mic.
Yeah, I do. Rob, what are your thoughts on Austin Eckroat heading into this weekend, his first Masters?
Yeah, so there are 20 first-time participants in this year's Masters. It's quite a lot. The field's only 89, so you do the math. It's quite a large chunk of them. First-timer hasn't won here since Fuzzy in '79. We know that whole narrative. I love Austin Eckroat's pedigree. He won right around the right time in terms of the first time on the PGA Tour a few weeks ago. What is his 3rd season, I think, now, so that makes sense. Typically the 3rd year is when guys sort of figure it out outside the ropes, and now that he's at the Masters, he's going to be soaking it all in. Not expecting him to contend. Maybe he makes the cut. Maybe he's top 30 or something like that. I know you're a big fan. I get it, and I'm rooting for him, and I'm rooting for you because that would be a great story. But there's a learning curve here. You got Wyndham Clark, David, in the 2nd round. He happens to be in my power rankings. He's the only debutant in the field in my power rankings. It's more of a respect to Wyndham Clark and who he is as a golfer. But I don't expect any of the first-timers to really make any noise. It just doesn't happen very often.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
So in terms of the perspective of the draft, maybe he falls to you. But you got your guy. That's all that matters. In terms of the tournament, if Wyndham Clark has a top 10, that'll be an incredibly great week. If Austin Eckroat has a top 25, I would say the same thing about him.
Yeah, and again, you have to have every one of your players get into the weekend. You have to get them into the weekend. So if you want to risk it with a guy like Phil who plays there well, or Patrick Reed would have been a nice pick because he always seems to be there to get into the weekend. If one player you have is cut, you're out. And we've had all 4, in this case, 5 teams. We've had that happen before. Rob, tell everybody again, PGA Tour, you do a lot of the fantasy picks, you do a lot of the work, and, of course, your power rankings and where people can find you.
Yeah, thanks. So PGAtour.com is the main site. We have golfbet.com where most of the work lands now. I'm doing a video thing every week, podcast, talk of the tour. And if you can't find anything and if you're interested in something, you can always find me on X. My handle is @RobBoltonGolf. And it's just great to have you back. It's been too long. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate you being patient with us today, coming on a little bit later than we first thought. Rob Bolton, PGA Tour analyst, PGAtour.com, as he mentioned, Rob. Rob Bolton Golf on X. All right.
Can't wait to get my first win of the year.
You can't win the Grand Slam if you don't win the first one. And, of course, that is then the U.S. Open. the PGA Championship, U.S. Open, and the Open Championship in July.
It's not a disdain I have, but this is the equivalent of me like doing a pro wrestling draft and asking you guys to pick as though like you don't follow it, and I don't really follow golf. So it's just kind of difficult for me to really make calculated decisions. So I end up just like looking at rankings and going, well, it'd be boring if I just go chalk. So let me go, and try to learn as best I can. But that's what I compare it to is asking y'all about. Let's do a draft of something that you guys don't really know or watch. Let's do a draft of characters on The Bear. You wouldn't know how to do that because you don't know who the hell any of them are. I at least have a more working.
Richie first off.
Yeah, Richie goes
he's
first.
He's one with the bullet.
Who? Yes.
Richie. Then I'm taking Fack.
Yeah, Fac's always a good choice. But yeah, I mean that's not. I love Rob and appreciate what he does and love the segments, but that's just sort of where I'm coming from. I literally just put the blindfold on me and let me just point me where the dartboard is, and I'll see if I can't hit a bullseye on occasion.
I tell you what, I saw you had the world golf rankings. That's pretty damn good. Although some of the guys that live are dropping like flies because they're not getting those points because they're playing in 54-hole tournaments and not yet approved to be a part of it. All right, thank you, Rob Bolton. Thank you to brand new sponsor again, Paul. Appreciate that.
GolfPartnerUSA.com. I put their link in the chat room. So if you're a golfer, it is used. So it's their warehouse. They're out of Japan. I'll just tell you, but they have a fantastic a selection of golf clubs, and they'll show you how to spot fake, used golf clubs. And so, say you've
like counterfeit or off, yeah.
And Smokey, you've trying to complete a set, or you lost one, you broke one.
Yep, I've
they
done
don't
that.
make them anymore.
I lost a 6-iron one time.
Well, so you can go on and you can probably find your 6-iron.
Black Dot G. No, your dad had one, I think, just hanging out in the garage one day.
Yeah, you can have the rest of those if you want. They're all sitting there, but they've got great stuff. Or clubs you can't find anymore, clubs you liked. It's quite the thing.
So what would I know we got to go to top 5. What would your reaction have been if Craig had taken Brooks instead of Rory, and you would have been stuck without your boy?
Well, Koepka, I'd have been fine.
Yeah,
it was nice.
Listen,
it's
so
fine.
Rob's top pick was Scheffler. Craig's was Rory. Emery's was John Rahm. Paul, you had Brooks Koepka. Mine was Xander Schauffele. I just like the way he's playing right now. Normally would not, and none of my guys are like elite looking but I just kind of like that team. We'll see what happens. It could explode on me.
Also, we'll have a new golf-related sponsor as well. They're going to send you and Emery some free swag.
There you go.
Caddy Daddy.
My favorite kind of sponsor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
my favorite kind of sponsor. This is 365 Sports. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, if you weren't there on Monday, and a lot of you throughout the world with the chance to see the solar eclipse, it was electric. They had a food truck, which was fantastic, a true Jamaican food truck. They had a live band, tennis, pickleball. They had members, of course, who were there normally during that time, and even non-members that were able to get in for just $5 rather than the fee of what is $10. A lot of energy, a lot of people looking up into the sky with the solar eclipse with those new glasses that everyone wore that we had on the air also on Monday afternoon show. If you are looking to get yourself in shape, if you love tennis or pickleball, that is the place to be. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lake Shore Drive in Waco.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 most interesting spring football stories. We're heading into the next couple weeks where we've got actual spring games coming up. I think there's 9 this weekend, and there's a whole bunch more next weekend, but 9
there's already been some,
Yeah, there have been some, but there's 9 big ones this weekend, and then next week there'll be some more. So thought we'd do a football story today since we've done all basketball and a little bit of golf. And we had 40 minutes of nothingness. Into the void.
Part of the eclipse.
Yeah, exactly. It just, we wanted everybody to experience what it's like to be, in outer space apart from everybody, I guess, because that's what it was to us. But top 5 most interesting spring football stories. Number 5, how do new conferences change teams' outlooks? So, I don't think for the SEC, for Texas and the SEC, it really changes theirs that much because they're rolling along. Although, it will be maybe a little bit tougher week in and week out than it was last year. I don't think they have the toughest schedule, and the SEC obviously. And then Big 12, you've got some teams coming in that obviously, like Utah, could win the conference year one with the quarterback they have coming back. And then in the ACC, I don't really know what it does for those teams because SMU is the best one of the three coming in, but again, they haven't played a schedule like that yet. So it should be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But I do think, how you adjust to that, how you adjust to the conferences, that's all taking place right now.
We ought to do a segment when Craig and I are going to be out for a couple of days because of Jennifer and Daniel's wedding. But
it's very selfish of her.
I know. And a segment on the new schools who are moving into other conferences, top 20, whatever it would be, on who will be better among all of them. And, of course, there's some blue bloods in that mix and also some up-and-coming teams, too. Craig, anything on what he was mentioning?
I mean, there's schools from all types of different situations because there's like a dozen of them that are all moving to new conferences. So, yeah, there's some blue bloods. There's some do they even cares like Cal and so on. But I'm just glad to be at this point. I mean, after watching that football season where everybody's just talking about where they're going to be next year, that got really old. I don't like that. It's part of why I don't want to talk realignment all the time because I don't want to talk about always like what's going to happen or what might happen as opposed to what's actually happening. And so that's fun at times, but I am glad this year that we can just say, all right, Oklahoma and Texas are in the SEC now. No more like they don't want to be here and, being and moaning about this and that. Same thing with, the Pac, like that's done now, not glad that that's officially over. Glad that some people got proven wrong, but glad that we at least have some finality on that, and we kind of know, all right, Oregon and Washington and, off to the Big Ten, and we know what's what, and that's kind of nice because for so many months and even for a couple of years now, there's been so many plates in the air about teams that were either officially moving or might be moving, and so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see and realize, like, oh, is that a Big Ten patch on Washington's jersey? And Ohio State's a conference game? And, like, that's all just going to be wild to wrap our heads around. So, yeah, it's definitely going to change some outlooks. And I look at my own favorite in Oklahoma of, like, do I need to, starting this year, kind of change my expectations about what's a good season or what the I guess, year in and year out is going to look like versus what it's been in the Big 12 for so long, which is pretty much – for the most part, 10-2, 10 and something or 11 and something. That might not be the case, in the SEC to start off with. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating.
Number 4, Ole Miss and their NIL All-Stars. And I say this, or I guess you say transfer portal All-Stars, whatever you want to say, but I'm more intrigued by Ole Miss than any team in the country right now because they are really, really going for it. And how this can mesh in in year one. And look, they've got Jackson Dart and they've got Walker Howard behind him. So they're ready to go, to keep this transition going. But Walter Nolan coming in, all the guys they have in the way. That's why I said they were number 1 yesterday for Damian Martinez. It just seems like that's a fit because they have a need and they are clearly willing to spend and they're trying to make things happen. But Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin this spring, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's got up his sleeve. This is kind of a seminal moment for him. Where is this? Can you get out of being a good coach and start being, maybe on your way to being a great coach? We'll see, because he's good, but he hasn't done anything great yet.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a hot dog eating contest. I think Joey Chestnut's actually supposed to be there for the Ole Miss spring game, and whatever else they got going on. That was certainly a fun, kind of twist to the normal just spring game setting, and I don't know what else they got in store for that, but he said that it's kind of be like a skills competition, and so they're trying to just change up the spring game routine, but they've obviously push their chips into the middle of the table. Saban's out of the way as well. And so, it's all there for the taking for Ole Miss to strike while the iron's hot and while there's a little bit of a void. You still have Kirby in Georgia. Now you got, Sark in Texas and Venables in Oklahoma rolling in as well. So it's not going to get any easier. But if there was a little bit of an opening, they're trying to slip through that with going as hard as they did in NIL. So, yeah, Ole Miss is going to be a very interesting team from a star power standpoint, and just the moves they made, it levels up their expectations from what are normally, pretty solid expectations.
Absolutely. Number 3, which QB transfers are ready to rock? I mean, is Cam Ward going to do well at Miami? Is DJU going to be the starter at FSU? There's actually a little bit of a question about that right now, because Brock Glenn apparently has been playing really well in the spring. I still think it's going to be DJU, and then Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek will battle it out there. But there's a lot of interesting ones. Is Riley Leonard healthy enough to really look, if he's healthy, he's going to be great for Notre Dame. But how long does that ankle injury linger, and how much does that slow him down in getting acclimated to Notre Dame and Mike Denbrock's system? We'll see. So there's a lot of questions all over the country when it comes to transfer quarterbacks. I'm going to hold off on Ohio State for a second because that's coming up in 2. But there's so many transfer quarterbacks all over the place. Look, is DeQuan Finn ready to go here at Baylor?
Yep.
Like, there's
is KJ Jefferson
going
to do
at UCF? Yeah.
I mean, is he going to do big things in Orlando? I mean, it's half the country's got a transfer quarterback, so it's a talking point for sure. And yeah, which ones thrive and which ones were bad investments, basically, is how you're going to be able to look at this, because a lot of them are getting paid good money to be the next big thing. But yeah, Cam Ward in Miami, that's going to be a heck of a lot of fun if he can duplicate what he was able to do in Pullman the last couple of years. So yeah, I don't love everybody's on their third school. I don't love just the lack of rules all the time, but I do think the transfer portal, if it's done anything besides just provide opportunities that athletes deserve, it is very interesting how it shakes up the quarterback market and how that can reset expectations all over the country. So yeah, that part of it's been really entertaining from a fan standpoint to watch all the quarterback dominoes.
Number 2, Dion, year 2. There's a lot been made about, maybe him not. Ari Wasserman wrote a column about him not maybe using all that recruiting. We talked about
Dylan Gabriel at Oregon's another one.
Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. There we go. Yeah.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's a lot. Malachi Nelson at Boise State.
Yeah.
But Dion year 2, I think, is a big story, and see how his roster is still mostly transfers, and he has not, gone head first into high school recruiting, and has said he's going to kind of do it a different way because he's Deion Sanders, and it's got to be different for him. But we'll see. I mean, that if they're coming into a new conference, that it's essentially a fresh start for everybody. So we'll see. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the country on his roster, and he's got one of the best all-around players in the country on his roster, and a couple other guys that are really, really Alton McCaskill's there. They've got what's the running back that they had last year that
came from Houston. Oh, you mentioned him.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, the one they recruited, that freshman that had such a good year out of the backfield. But are they better enough up front to where teams don't maul them? So
the hype train that led to all of that, the opening game that they won, was insane, and it was fun to watch. And then, of course, the wheels came off as the schedule changed quite a bit.
TCU wasn't that good.
Yeah,
coming off a national championship.
Neither was
appearance.
Nebraska. The Colorado State game, of course, was a game in which they won that could have been a loss. But it will be fun to see if the hype will be as much or even close to what it was when they had their great start last year, before it started, during that, and then, of course, as we said, poof, the wheels came off.
Paul, you think of Dylan Edwards?
Yeah, Dylan Edwards.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to see them in the Big 12 again. I don't know how much that's really going to be a thing throughout the year of like welcome in the new schools and all that. I know in the SEC it's going to be a big deal. I'm sure in the Big 10 they'll make it a big deal. I think it'll be a big deal in the Big 12 to some extent. But he obviously comes in very controversial. People love him or love to hate him, and there's not really a whole lot of in-between, although I do kind of find myself in that in-between. I'm not swayed by his popularity and his star power and all of that. I kind of see through a lot of that stuff, and then on the other side, I don't despise the guy like so many people seem to, but he's an interesting figure, and he's got a couple of big-time stars that are leading the way, but if they can't block up front, it's not going to matter all that much as we saw last year. If they can't play defense, it's not going to matter that much like we saw last year, but they definitely make things more interesting. But as we also saw last year, they make things interesting until they're totally ruled out of the picture, and then people don't care anymore. And that's what happened last year. So early on, if they can catch fire, it could be one of the biggest stories in college football like it was a year ago. But they've got to win. Bottom line, they've got to win, or nobody's safe, including Deion Sanders.
Number 1, Ohio State quarterback battle. It is not as cut and dry as just Will Howard and Devin Brown looking good. Apparently, and this should be a shock to no one, Julian Sayin, the number 1 quarterback in the country, is playing out really well and it might push for some reps. He's just a really good player. Ryan Day's roped him in. Ohio State and Ole Miss this year playing in the playoff with the amount of transfers they were able to run in, and the beneficiaries, I think, the most of the coaching upheaval this cycle were those two. But yeah, Ohio State's got a 3-person quarterback battle right now, and I think Will Howard probably winds up with it, but maybe things weren't as dire at that position as people may have thought with Devin Brown and coming back, because apparently he's made some strides.
Well, how about this? Will Howard got beat out at his old school. So it's not like he's not a guy that's just an automatic. And so, yeah, I mean, he got beat out by a freshman in Avery Johnson a year ago. So he's capable of getting knocked off that perch, and I never looked at him as like, oh, yeah, he's the surefire starter in Columbus, and nobody's going to beat him. So, yeah, I'd imagine that Julian Sayin is giving him a run for his money and, the rest of that room. So, yeah, that's going to be very interesting. And, boy, I mean, you better hope in the end that it's him, although you'd love it if, the freshman's just that good right away. But investment-wise, I'm sure Ohio State's, not worried too much about one investment not going right. They've got a lot of firepower money-wise, but still, I mean, you did put a big deposit down on Will Howard to be the guy, and so I'm not surprised, but that is interesting that he's getting a little bit of a run for his money.
A couple other quarterbacks we didn't bring up, only because it'll be interesting to see what Blake Shapen does at Ole Miss. And then Dylan Gabriel is still around Mississippi State, I'm sorry, with Jeff Lebby, and Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. And yet again, another year for him.
Yeah, I brought him up.
Oh, you did? Okay, good. I wanted somebody in the chat asked if we did. All right, Paul, thank you very much. Emery Winter, Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie with, oh, my goodness, always so much that they do right here in front of us in bringing this to you. Paul Catalina tomorrow and Friday. Craig and I have duties for a wedding.
So glad I went to Hawaii.
I'm so
I did not have to deal with any
ready for this to all be over with. I really am.
Oh my God, it's about Daniel and Jennifer.
You know.
And it has been for like, a year now. No, I'm kidding. I'm very happy for them, but like, I don't want to not be here for the Scott Drew news. Like, I'm not really happy about that.
We might have to do a cut-in or two with you.
So, I mean, I will be relieved that everybody can just stop planning for a while after this. Yeah. I am looking forward to that, but I'm obviously want to see a great ceremony.
Just wait till the random ass errands you're going to have to run.
I know. I know.
You already have one.
I've got one on Saturday at 7:30 in the morning.
That's one.
Before a tea time. All right.
You don't have any idea.
I know. And then there will be something panicked, forgotten, or whatever. We will figure it out. All right. Thank you all. Thanks to our great sponsors. We wait for the Scott Drew decision. Waco or Lexington. I'm David Smoak for Paul and Craig again, 365 Sports.
Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate it.
Almost to 40,000. Another 1,000. Let's go.
Appreciate that. Good night.